This video might not be as fun as my others. Hi, my name is John Bonjour. I am a comic artist and film enthusiast. And I thought a lot about whether or not I wanted to talk about this, whether or not I wanted to make it like something that I'm open about or whatever. I gave a lot of thought to whether or not I wanted to contentize this kind of sadness, and I wanted it to be genuine. Anyway, I've given a lot of thought to whether or not I wanted to make this, but I think I have something to share, and I think it could be really helpful for other people going through a similar thing. So, I lost my grandmother this month. Well, technically last month, within the last week. My grandmother passed. She was the best, and it sucks so bad. And I have been processing through a lot of it. I've been trying really hard to be careful with my emotional processing, and obviously I'm not done processing. It's only been a week, if that. But I've realized something that I think is really important to me. So I wanted to kind of talk about that and give some advice and some recommendations for people going forward. So throughout my life, I've had kind of a up and down in terms of my faith, in terms of my relationship with God, all of that. It originated with her, with my grandmother, because she and my grandpa are the strongest Christians I have ever met. Like their faith is so powerful and present in their lives and so guiding to them in a way that I find hugely inspirational and really impactful. I really have looked up to them for their ability to just fully follow, and something that I'm not good at, something that I have a hard time with, is just trusting. But throughout my life, throughout my faith walk, there's this kind of running joke that God and I seem to have, if that, or just running little nudge here and there, where movies just kind of happen to coincide with life events for me extremely well. A few examples: my friends and I had watched all of the John Wick movies. Lincoln, Preston, and I had watched all of the John Wick movies, and we just loved them. I mean, they were just it's dude movies, right? What happened to be coming out the weekend of my wedding? Actually, the day of my wedding was technically the release date of John Wick Chapter 4, and the night before, my buddies took me out to see John Wick Chapter 4 as part of the bachelor party, and that's just kind of a random little thing that happened to work out. And then what happens to be coming out the week that Lincoln and I decide to go out to Moab to visit Preston? Ballerina, the John Wick spin-off movie. What's coming out when my wife Darcy and I leave for Texas is Guardians of the Galaxy 3, a movie about a family kind of separating and going their own ways. And it's these things where it's movies have a tendency to speak to me, and movies have a tendency to come out and come into my life at times that I really need them. And you could call it a coincidence. I'm perfectly fine with you calling it that. I choose to see that as a little hint from God, a little nudge from God, just being like, hey, here's a little gift, something to help you process, because film truly helps me process through emotions and through times in my life and through things that are important. There's 100 other examples of that exact same thing happening over and over and over and over. And it's kind of crazy. It's surprisingly fun. And it's not even movies coming out. It's movies coming to mind randomly, or it's movies that I've never seen and just happen to watch, say, the Before trilogy the night before I broke off an engagement. So it's these things where movies and my life are so intertwined that it starts to be a sense of communication and a sense of my way of processing through things. So I was thinking a lot about how do I process this, because we knew she was going to pass. We knew my grandmother was going to pass because she has been getting worse for quite a while. So it was this thing where it was this waiting game, feels like such the wrong way to say it, but it was this, we knew it was going to happen. We were waiting for the shoe to drop, and there was a week or so where it could have been literally any of those days, and every day I was pretty sure it was going to be that day. And that sucks. That's a horrible place to be emotionally. And I needed to process through that emotion with film. And I was realizing that I don't know if other people do this, but if they do, I have a lot of ideas for movies that could be really helpful. So I'm doing this thing. I'm calling it Movies for Moments. We'll see if I ever make another one of these, but Movies for Moments. These are 5 movies, and I'm going to end with the one that I went with. 5 movies that I think would be really helpful for processing grief, for processing the loss of people that are important to you. And I'm going to talk about a little bit why I chose each movie, because I did go for different things that could be helpful in different seasons of the grief processing. Because I don't think that there's one movie that's like, oh, you just watch that and you'll be fine. I don't think that exists. I do think there are specific energies and specific things that could be helpful in different seasons throughout the process. And I'll probably be watching all of these movies just as I process through the loss of my grandmother. So, first and foremost, a movie that came out, I'm fairly sure this year, The Life of Chuck. If you haven't seen The Life of Chuck, you might want to skip ahead because there's some spoilers for it going forward. The Life of Chuck is essentially a movie about the end of a human life. A lot of it is, well, all of it takes place within the mind or memories of this guy Chuck as he's dying, as he's passing away. And it's in 3 acts. The first act of the movie is this really introspective universe where all of these people are just living their lives, and they see these billboards thanking Chuck for his service, and then the world starts to end, the stars start to go out, people start disappearing. It's this kind of horrifying thought piece, if nothing else, on the existential dread of life and where we go and what happens when we die and all the world. It's phenomenally interesting just as a film, but also I think in this case, the way that it walks you through the end of a life. The second act is just the joy of life, and the first act, or the third act, which is technically act 1, is what they call it, but the third act being the start of life and this feeling of like new adventures, possible fears, things where you are aware of this inevitability. It's basically starting at death and walking you back through the process. And I think watching that movie would be hugely helpful in a time of processing the death of someone, or processing through the thought of death, because I've lost other people, but no one this close to me. And so the idea of death is way scarier and way more real to me right now. And so also I got hit with a piece of wood. I was chopping some wood and it made a cut. In case you were worried about that, Life of Chuck, a movie that I think would be hugely helpful in the processing of the concepts of death. A very different vibe, but I think equally helpful. My Neighbor Totoro it's not inherently a movie about grief or loss necessarily, but it's a movie about the fear of loss, and a movie about existing in this space where you're having good, beautiful days and you're aware of potential darkness surrounding you. I also think the main benefit to My Neighbor Totoro is the general vibe of the movie is so calming and so sweet and innocent. And I think that is something that I really need in times like this. And just like, I think that's something that is so helpful. Part of this is processing through emotions. The other part of it is, I think, especially something like My Neighbor Totoro might take you away from your emotions for a little bit, and not in like an aggressive way, but just in a way that makes you exist, in a way that like carries you, sweeps you off your feet for a couple of hours, where you just get to live in this imaginary, beautiful world where the biggest, fuzziest guy gets to hold you and fly around for a while. That sounds really nice, and I think My Neighbor Totoro would be a solid movie for when you don't want to think about it, but you do want to feel it, if that makes any sense. It is also just a really good movie. That was part of my choices for these films, is I wanted to come up with movies that are good. Things that I think are, there's obviously, you can watch a bunch of bad movies and laugh at them and not think about it, but I wanted to come up with movies that I think are extremely well made, really solid films that will help you in some way through this season. So My Neighbor Totoro, I think, it's the calm, gentle, lull you to sleep kind of movie that you might need. And if you want to talk about diametric opposites, complete alternative vibe, another movie that is, and again, I'm going to be spoiling it, also from this year, 28 Years Later. I know that doesn't sound like a good movie for grief, because why would you watch a zombie movie? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I agree with you, except that 28 years later is both confronting the harsh realities of life, but also confronting the acceptance of death in a way that I think is really powerful and surprising, shocking for the movie. It's a film that the third act of the movie kind of has nothing to do with it being a zombie apocalypse, and I never was frustrated by that. I was never disappointed or let down. It's something that switches the physical stakes for emotional stakes in a way that is so effortless and so impressive that it requires you to be on board with it. And I think it really does a good job of showing human value, which sounds, again, really weird for a horror movie, for a zombie movie. If you haven't seen it, I fully understand why you wouldn't think this is the right call. And if you have seen it, I would understand why you don't think that's the right call. But I wanted to pick something that felt a little bit out of left field, a little bit different, because there's a lot of movies that I think you could pick that would help you with those emotions. But I think there is something uniquely poignant about a movie that never shies away from the darkness, the harshness, the scariness of what life can be, and also the beautiful, amazing, powerful moment that death is, and the thing that it does for you in your life and in you, and the way that it's a circle, the way that it's a cycle, the way that it's inevitable and yet crushing. It's such an effectively emotional film that I also think is very entertaining and very scary, and that might be something you need. Let out some feelings. And so, like, that was part of the chopping wood, was like, yes, we needed firewood, but also it's a way to physically express something, a way to physically express emotion. And I think that is something that this movie kind of does in a way, and I think it can be really helpful in that sense. Number 4, Thunder Road. This is Jim Cummings', I think his directorial debut, certainly a movie that he directed and starred in. And it's a weird call. I will fully grant you that, because it's extremely sad and extremely funny. And I really think this will not be for everyone. So tread lightly on whether or not you feel like this. If you're currently going through it, consider whether or not this is the right move for you, because I am a person who values and needs laughter in my life, which means that a lot of the time I process hard emotions through jokes, through laughter, through things that are inarguably not appropriate to laugh at, things that are not inherently funny, but I find funny and I need to find funny because I have to laugh. Laughter can be so dismissive. It's such an interesting thing. It can be really dismissive, and it can be really I don't know what I'm trying to, dishonoring. But I also think laughter can be beautiful, and laughter can be expressive, and laughter can be as good as tears. It can be as important as tears, and I think people don't always give that the credit it deserves. So again, if you're not a person who processes and needs laughter, don't watch Thunder Road in this time, because it's going to be trying to make you laugh at things that you're currently feeling, and if you're not ready for that, it will not work, and it might be detrimental. But if you are, and if you are a person who needs that kind of thing like I am, I think it can be really important and really, really poignant and really helpful in that season. And I know for me, laughter is something that I, again, absolutely need, and I appreciate a thing that is willing to take jabs at things that are not funny and still make you laugh at it. I also, just outside of that, if you don't think it's the right movie for this season, I do think you should watch it at some point in your life, because it's just a very good movie. But again, consider whether or not it's the movie for the season. That does bring me to my number 5 movie for this moment of grief. I cannot define a more perfect movie, and the movie that came to mind, I haven't thought about this movie in years, and it just randomly popped into my mind in this season, well, right before this season actually, and I almost watched it before any of this was really happening, and I just didn't for whatever reason, and then it popped back into my mind when this all came, when she started to pass, and it is the movie that I chose to go for in that waiting period. I think I watched it the day before she passed, maybe 2 days before, but it was in the period where it could have been any day. And it's it was the most helpful thing I could have done. It helped me process all of my huge swirling emotions. It's the movie The Farewell. The film stars Awkwafina, and it is about her going back to China to see her grandmother before she passes, and the grandmother doesn't know that she's about to pass. She doesn't know that she has cancer because the family is keeping it from her. And there's a lot of questions about the honoring, dishonoring, like whether or not the morality of the decision to not tell the grandmother about it. And I think that's all very interesting. Not particularly relevant to my situation, but with my grandmother currently passing, it was this, the thing that I love about this movie is that it isn't big or grand or dramatic. There is no story inherently. It's just wandering through this time in the character's life, watching her process the idea that her grandmother that she loves so deeply is not going to be with her anymore and soon to pass. And it's this slow, quiet, ponderous movie that gave me the time to actually process through and brought up gently, kindly, things that I would need to process through in ways that I hadn't before. And it was a really important experience for me, honestly. I had seen it before, and it has always made me cry, but I don't know if I've ever quite cried as hard as I did watching The Farewell. Just processing these emotions and these feelings. I can't recommend highly enough. If you're in this season, I truly think The Farewell is the perfect movie. It was the perfect movie for me. It was the thing that I needed to give me space and time and tools even to process through this time. So that's the movie that I highly recommend the most. I wrote a thing on Letterboxd, and I'm just gonna read it. See if I can pull it up here. I'm just gonna read my Letterboxd review of The Farewell, and probably in the video there. So I appreciate you watching. If you want to see more of these movies for moments, things, I would love to come up with recommendations for people in different seasons. It's a love language between me and God, and I would love to express that love language to other people if you're interested. So let me know. Here we go. The Farewell, 2019. While we're at it, directed by Lulu Wang and starring Zhao Sujin and Awkwafina and a series of other people that are all exceptional in the movie. Here we go. Watched on October 22nd, 2025. I don't know how much of this I'm going to keep in. Maybe none of it, maybe all of it. My grandmother is about to die. She's one of the strongest people I have ever met. Her faith is unshakable. Her love for her family exceeds reason and logic. I can't say that she was never harsh, that she didn't frustrate me. Every summer we'd go to spend a week with them. She's possibly the most stubborn person in the world. I wouldn't give a second of that frustration up. Not a second. I never once questioned whether she loved me. She always wanted the best for me, even if we disagreed on what that might be. It didn't matter how much we bickered. She always had an extra sausage ball on my plate at breakfast. I'm her only grandson, so I think in many ways we have a special bond. I've learned so much from her. I want to be like her when I grow up. Strong, resilient, faithful, honest, kind, generous, funny, genuine. Right to the end. If there ever was an example of finishing the race well, it was my grandmother. I'm going to miss you, Grandma. I already do, more than I can put into words. I'm sorry I cuss so much.